Alexander Thorne was a man who built an empire from steel and silence. His world was all about predictable outcomes and calculated returns, a fortress of logic where emotions were a liability. He trusted numbers, not people. Coming home early wasn't part of his schedule, a tiny hiccup in a life planned down to the minute. But on this particular Tuesday, as he stepped into the marble quiet of his mansion, a sound echoed from the west wing that didn't belong. It was a soft, gentle melody, followed by a noise he hadn't heard in years, his son's laughter. He followed the sound toward his son's playroom, his brow furrowed with suspicion. He was sure he'd find the new maid on her phone, neglecting her duties, just another disappointment in a long line of them. But when he peeked through the half-open door, what he saw didn't just surprise him, it shattered the very foundation of the world he'd built. The maid was teaching his son something that couldn't be found in any of their expensive books, and it was a lesson Alexander was terrified he had forgotten himself. Before we find out what Alexander saw that day and how it changed absolutely everything, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. You really don't want to miss how this incredible story ends. For 2 years, ever since his wife Amelia passed away, Alexander's home had been as cold and orderly as his boardrooms. He treated grief like a messy variable that needed to be locked away, replacing it with longer hours at the office and a growing distance from his own son, 7-year-old Leo. Once a vibrant, happy kid, Leo had become a small shadow, moving silently through the vast, empty halls. The boy's laughter seemed to have faded with his mother, replaced by a quiet that mirrored his father's own. Alexander had hired the best of the best, tutors, child psychologists, and a revolving door of nannies, but none of them could break through Leo's silent world. They all saw a problem to be solved, a file to be managed. Then Alara arrived. She was different. She was older, with a quiet wisdom in her eyes, and a patience about her that felt real. She was hired simply as a maid, with no flashy resume full of child development degrees. Instead, she brought a sense of calm that for the first time didn't feel like an intrusion. She cleaned the silent house with a gentle grace, never overstepping. But she saw what Alexander, lost in his own grief, refused to. She saw a little boy drowning in all that silence. Alexander stood frozen in the doorway, the cold suspicion on his face melting into pure disbelief. There, in the middle of the playroom floor, sat Alara, and right beside her, cross-legged and completely captivated, was Leo. Between them wasn't a tablet or some expensive toy, but a simple terracotta pot filled with soil. Alara's hands, smudged with dirt, were gently guiding Leo's as they patted down the earth around a tiny green sprout. She was humming a soft tune, a song Amelia used to sing in the garden. "Every living thing needs care to grow, Leo," she said softly, her voice a stark contrast to the transactional tones that usually filled the house. "Even when it looks like nothing is happening on top, underneath the roots are getting stronger. Your mother knew that." Leo looked up at her, his eyes, so often looking down, now bright with curiosity. He asked a question, his little voice rusty from not being used. "Will it remember her?" Alara smiled, a gentle but heartbreaking expression. "It will remember the sun and the water and the gentle hands that care for it, and in that way it remembers the love that planted it. We don't say goodbye to love. We just learn how to help it keep growing." Alexander felt a crack form in the armor around his heart. This wasn't a lesson about gardening. It was about grief. It was about memory. It was about hope. It was everything he had been running from, being taught to his son by a woman he paid to dust the furniture. The scene he had witnessed left Alexander deeply unsettled. His first instinct was to go in there, to put a stop to this what? This kindness? He backed away to his study, his mind racing. For a man who controlled multi-billion-dollar mergers, he felt completely powerless. That evening, he did something he hadn't done in 2 years. He watched the security camera feed from the playroom. He saw Elara and Leo watering the little plant on the windowsill. He saw them reading a book, not about market trends, but about stars. Elara pointed to the pages, explaining how starlight travels for millions of years to reach us. So when we look at the night sky, she whispered, we're actually seeing the past. They might be gone, but their light is still here, just like the people we love. As days turned into weeks, the mansion began to change. The heavy silence started to lift, replaced by the sound of Leo's questions, and, every so often, his laughter. Alexander would come home and find his son not staring at the screen, but with dirt under his fingernails, or with flour on his cheek from baking with Elara. She was reintroducing life into the sterile home, one small, gentle act at a time. The boy who had been so withdrawn now talked about constellations, about the life cycle of a ladybug, about the way bread dough felt in his hands. Curious and frankly ashamed of his own absence, Alexander ran a background check on Elara. What he found wasn't a scandal, but a quiet tragedy. Elara had been a pediatric grief counselor, well known in her small town, until she lost her own husband and young daughter in a car accident. The pain had been too much, and she'd walked away from her profession, seeking anonymity in simple, quiet work. She wasn't just a maid, she was a healer trying to mend her own heart by mending a little boy's heart. The revelation hit Alexander like a punch to the gut. This woman, who had lost everything, was giving his son the one thing his billions couldn't buy, a way through his sorrow. Alexander now knows a secret that could change everything, for his family and for Elara. What would you do if you discovered someone's hidden pain and quiet kindness in your own home? Let us know what you think in the comments below. The breaking point came during a tense dinner Alexander was hosting for his firm's top investors. The whole affair was cold and formal, held in the cavernous dining hall. During a quiet moment, Leo, who'd been allowed to stay up, walked up to the table. He was holding the small pot where the sprout now had 2 healthy leaves. He proudly showed it to his father. One of the investors, a cynical man named Marcus, chuckled. "What's this, Alexander? Your heir is learning to be a gardener? I hope his tutor is teaching him something more valuable, like how to read a stock ticker." The table snickered. The old Alexander would have brushed it off, maybe even agreed with a cold smile. But this time, he looked at his son's hopeful face, then at the doorway where Elara stood, watching with a worried expression. He suddenly saw the world through her eyes, a world where value wasn't measured in dollars, but in growth and healing. He slowly stood up, and his voice cut through the room. "This plant," Alexander said, firm and clear, "is the most valuable asset in this house. It's teaching my son that broken things can grow again. It's teaching him that love doesn't die, it just changes form. That's a lesson no stock ticker can provide, Marcus. It's a lesson in humanity, taught by a woman with more wisdom and integrity than anyone in this room." He then walked over to Leo, knelt down, and put his arm around his son. "It's beautiful, Leo. Mom would have loved it." It was the first time he had mentioned Amelia to his son in 2 years. The investors just sat there, stunned. Alexander hadn't just defended his maid, he had declared a total shift in his own values. The empire of steel and silence was finally starting to crumble. After the last guest left, a new, warmer silence settled over the house. Alexander found Elara in the kitchen, quietly cleaning. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling foreign but right on his tongue, "for what you did for my son, for what you're doing for us." Elara just nodded, her eyes glistening. "He just needed someone to see him," she replied softly. From that day on, everything was different. Alexander started coming home early. He didn't just watch from a distance, he joined in. He knelt in the dirt next to Leo and Ilara as they moved the growing plant to the garden, right where Amelia had planted her roses. He learned the names of the stars with his son, and for the first time, he shared stories about his wife, not with pain, but with a gentle smile.
The mansion, once a monument to wealth and sorrow, slowly became a home again. It wasn't filled with expensive things, but with the priceless sounds of laughter, conversation, and shared meals. Alexander offered Ilara a new position, not as a tutor, but as a family partner. It came with a salary that reflected her true worth and a fund to restart her counseling work for other children, if she ever wanted to. He realized that true wealth wasn't in his bank accounts, but in the connection he'd found again with his son, and in the quiet grace of the woman who taught them both how to live. One evening, as the three of them looked up at the night sky, Leo pointed to the brightest star. "That one's for Mom," he said. Alexander put his arm around his son, and his hand gently found Ilara's. Their fingers intertwined. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, it felt bright, like a distant star whose light had finally, after a long journey, reached home. Alexander Thorne learned that the greatest lessons in life often come from the most unexpected teachers. His entire world was rewritten, not by a business deal, but by a quiet act of compassion. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And click the video on your screen to watch another story about how one small act can change a life forever.